Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Cat B and Andy B Inspired Connections podcast. We are coming to you today transatlantic from the UK. Without further ado, let me welcome my beautiful co-host, Cat B, and our super amazing guests today, Shining Light Parents, fellow affiliate leader. Oh, the titles could go on, but let me welcome our good friends, Jeff and Nan Cottrell. How are you all doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's so lovely to have you here, guys. Share with everybody your story and who you are and what's brought you here today. How do you know Andy and I, and what kind of inspired connections have you had?
Well, I'll start, and I'm going to let Nan chime in. Really, how we met each other, I just consider a ripple effect from, starting with the passing of our oldest child, Austin, who passed at 24 in December of 2019. Just a series of events of other people brought us together. I mean, I think of the vision and the selflessness of like Elizabeth Boyson and Mark Ireland for starting Helping Parents Heal was really the first connection, and we were able to meet Kat through that. And then further on, the vision and selflessness of Mike Edwards starting Helping Fathers Heal, which I know, Kat, you had a little push in getting Helping Fathers Heal started. So then when I joined there, I've met Andy and we became good friends, and we've been able to converse with Kat, and we've had a reading with Kat and a couple gallery readings on HPH. So I've known you through HPH and HFH, but really finding all that, I would have found nothing on my own. All the credit goes to my wife getting us going on that path. So I'll let her tell a little bit of the story, how we came to find HPH and eventually meet the both of you.
Yeah, it was one of those things that after we lost Austin, it was such a tragic and just a unexpected death that, other than us losing grandparents, we were one of those lucky people that we really hadn't had to think a lot about the afterlife. We both were raised Catholic, and so we thought our grandparents are in heaven, and that's great. And, they died at an older age, and, it was okay. So this was just such a, I don't know, can't even tell you like how it made us feel, but obviously we were not okay, and I needed to know my son was okay. That was the one thing, is that I was in such a panic that, okay, so he's in heaven, but what does that mean? And I need to know more. So when I could finally pick my head up off the floor, which, was a while. I call that the fetal. We kind of went through the fetal position stage where people were feeding us, and, they were checking on our own kids because we just didn't even have the capability of really taking care of ourselves because it was that tragic and fast and whatever. Then I kind of had a fire burning in me thinking, okay, we need to find Austin. Like, we need to know where he is and what's going on, and anything that we can find out. So I started looking for books on, not so much on grief, because I knew I was grieving, and I didn't really want anybody to tell me how to do that because it just hurt and, whatever. But I just wanted to know more about everything. So I think one of the first books that I read was, I gotta find my page here, was the book that Joe McQuillan wrote, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side, because it was a parent writing a book about losing a child that attracted me, and just the synchronicities of his son Christopher dying in Wisconsin and in the cold weather. And there were so many similarities with Austin's story. It just really resonated with me. So I read his book, and I read all he did to do, the connections and everything. And I was amazed. And I said to Jeff, I think you should read this book. It's pretty amazing. Just number one, what we have in common, and number two, what this man has done to search for his son, and how successful he has been. And again, read, just so many other books. I could go through my whole list of them. Many of the same ones that we've all read. The Life to Afterlife led us then to turn on the TV and tune into some of the Netflix specials. That was the first we had. It was weeks before we even turned on a TV, because we just looked at each other and, didn't even, just sat there. And we watched some of those, and that's where we ended up seeing Helping Parents Heal. We saw the reference to Helping Parents Heal. And I said to Jeff, I think we should check this out. I think we should check this group out. this might be something that can help us.
And that's really normal, isn't it? At the beginning stages of grief, being completely numb, not really wanting to move, the fetal position, people needing to support you because actually you move. And then this search for knowledge comes a few weeks or months later, depending on where you are in your process. And some people are really hungry. I know people that have got like 80 books. They've gone absolutely crazy for it. But it's interesting, isn't it, how that synchronicity of picking up Joe's book, it having a connection with you, inspired you then to Netflix, that inspired you then to Helping Parents Heal. It's almost like this little sort of snake effect till you find your way. So you really just have to feel your way. Is that right?
It is. A lot of these concepts were completely foreign to us, too.
Completely foreign.
And, reading that book, it's really my first introduction to even what a medium was. I didn't know. I was ignorant to that. And, I'd probably just blow it off. I was skeptical of a lot of the things that we've come to learn. But a synchronicity then from reading that book, he talked about different mediums. And one of the mediums that he talked about in the book, we're about 3 months in at this point, and Nan and I, we just needed to get out of the cold weather. So we booked a trip to Vegas and just to get away for a few days, get into some warmer weather. And we booked a hotel because it had a pool. We said, we just want to sit outside and be warm and share, our thoughts with each other. So we got there, or shortly before we left, our hotel got canceled and we had to book a different hotel. So we changed to a different hotel. And as we're driving to this hotel, a taxi cab goes by with a sign on top of it with the medium we read about in this book. And he was performing in Vegas.
At Caesars, where we were staying.
It turned out to be at the hotel where we got that night. And we looked it up and there were 2 tickets left.
Oh my God.
We literally booked it an hour before. But again, we had no introduction to this at all. And we sat down almost in the front row.
Yeah.
An hour before the show, booked the tickets, and Austin came through.
Yeah.
And we were just...
Yeah. And I said to Jeff before the show, I don't know how this works, but if he would come through, I can't talk. At this stage, I was still ugly crying most minutes of every day. And I said, I just can't talk or do anything. So I said, you're going to have to do everything if they would call on us or whatever. So it says just this. So that's clear.
Let's just press that a minute again. Your hotel gets cancelled. You end up in a different hotel. You see a billboard randomly that's got the same synchronicity of the medium that was in the book, which is the first one that you read that you felt a connection to. And then there's just 2 tickets left an hour before the show, right at the front, and they pick on
we
you.
did in Vegas as we went to that show.
Wow.
That's a pretty good inspired connection, I think.
Yeah.
That's what happened in Vegas.
And we walked in and Nan said that and she said, I can't talk. And I said, Nan, Austin's going to want to talk to you. So like the first thing, they come over and they give me the microphone. I say one thing and the medium goes, no, he wants to talk to Mom. And I'm like, I told you.
What a stinker. Well, and when he first came through, when he was describing the spirit that was coming through, we both knew. And he said, but you know what? There's other spirits and he wants some of these other people to go first. And then we knew it was him. Like we just knew that's Austin. That sounds like Austin, but we had never done anything like this. So by the time he got to us and started telling us these things that no one would have known. And again, booked an hour before, first medium, we didn't know. And
How many
200
people?
maybe?
About 200.
About 200. And
people...
I, of course, was ugly crying through the whole reading because it was just amazing. And it was our first chance, I guess, to connect with Austin, and I didn't expect it to happen so soon.
Okay, so tell us what happens next in Vegas. So you have the reading. How do you feel after this? How are you processing it?
Well, for our first few too, you almost get on a high. You're so excited, and we felt like we had a conversation with our son, and we connected with them, and then you can kind of come down and crash after that a little bit too, because you want that all the time and it's not there all the time. But it was the first experience was like, wow, there's something to this and I want more. It kind of made you hungry for more.
We got back to the room and Jeff started just writing down as much as we could remember about everything that he said and everything. We've tried to do that with every reading that's not a recording. And that way we thought we can, relive it and read the notes and share it with people we think would be open to listening to it. And it started our trip out really amazing. And, it wasn't this, we were going to live it up and party, and, we were going to get the hell out of our house and just go somewhere, So it did lift us up a little bit, where we were able to walk around and just face people and,
So I have a question, if I can ask a question. So you're raised Catholic. I was raised evangelical. How did your mind, faith, experience, how did you work this out, right? All of these things come in line. You have this incredible experience. Did it rub against any of your upbringing, your religious thoughts? I mean, did it have any effect like that? Or was it just like, hey, this is amazing?
No, it definitely did. We talked about, and maybe then you could touch on Austin too, his thoughts, growing up Catholic and then experience what we're experiencing. We felt we were becoming more spiritual. And I actually think I pray more and think about spirit more and think about others more, and became more, or there's more empathy in me. And I think it all the things that, we want to do in our religion and help others and have that love and everything, I actually think it grew, but in a different way. I felt the Catholic faith was a little more restrictive and limiting, where there's so much more beyond it. That was for me.
Yeah. And we grew up Catholic and we went to CCD. We weren't real, we did go to church. Our kids were baptized, confirmed, first communion, all of that. Austin was one of the three that, after going through part of it, he said, I don't think I can be confirmed. And he said this to me because I'm really questioning a lot of this. And I said, I think that's okay. I think it's okay. So we went and talked to one of the priests, and he was very open and kind to Austin about it. And he said, Austin, that's how religion is. There's a lot of questions, a lot of things that we don't know. It is your choice. Because Austin said, I feel like a hypocrite. I'm not sure I believe in God. And, Austin's a very mathematical, very scientific mind. And he had the courage enough to, be like, he was very authentic. He could never fake anything. So he really felt like, I don't know if I can go through with this process because I'm feeling this way. It was really tormenting him. And long story short, the priest said, it's okay to be confirmed if you're questioning your beliefs. It's okay. Many people question. There are things we still question. So he was confirmed and whatever, but, he was becoming more spiritual too. And a few weeks before he passed, he and I were just sitting on the couch. He had come home for a weekend. Was living in Arizona at that time and come home. He was a little homesick and he was struggling a little bit, and he came home and we were just having a conversation and about a lot of things, that from everything to everything. And he brought up religion, and he said, back to, confirmation. He said, I still don't believe in God, but he said, I'm really becoming a lot more spiritual. And we didn't really talk much more beyond that. And I said, well, that's really interesting. I said, maybe we can have another conversation about that, or, maybe you can tell me more later on or whatever. I think we were at a stopping point or whatever, but it was just very interesting. Because, after the fact too, we found so much evidence that we felt like his soul knew it was going to be his time, as hard as that is. And I think he knew it, and he was struggling with it. It wasn't like he was becoming spiritual, and I've read about some, younger people they know and they're okay with it. He was really struggling with death, and he was almost consumed with it a little bit.
I was going to say, chipping on the faith thing, because some people think it's got to be one or the other, but you can hold two concepts in your mind at once, can't you? You can be very spiritual and have a religion and faith, or you can be an atheist and still have a spirituality around you. I think it's up to the individual, and all healing, regardless of what that looks like, if it makes a difference to you, should be open to all. I think if you agree.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. Yeah. And that, that same conversation, like like Nan was alluding to, Austin, was talking about death. And he says, I don't mean to alarm you. He goes, I'm not thinking that way. He goes, but I just can't stop thinking about it. And months and months and months leading up to this, Nan had premonitions that this was going to happen.
So you had precognitive dreams?
I did. I was waking up. Yeah, I was waking up and like in a cold sweat, panicking. And I would say to Jeff, Austin's not okay. Something's not okay. We need to call Austin. And he would say, well, let's just look him up on, oh, he's in his apartment. We could look up his location, stalkers that we are. And he's okay. He's okay. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was not okay. And it was months and months and months before.
You're telepathically picking up on that information. That imprint is already in the ether. Isn't that interesting? How many weeks went before when the first incident started was it, Nan, until Austin transitioned?
Probably about 6 months.
Wow. So you knew 6 months in advance?
Yes.
Something was on the table.
Yeah. It was unsettling. In one of the books too, I had read about exit points, and, that was a brand new concept to me and I didn't know about it. But, as we had thought back too, there were a few times we almost lost Austin in his life. I thought, thank God those weren't his exit points earlier on. I'm so grateful we had him for 24 years. The first one was actually before he was born. I was about 4 months along with him and I had horrible cramping and bleeding. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm losing this baby. This is, we didn't know if it was a girl or a boy, but, Jeff rushed me to the ER. And I thought, I can't believe this. I'm losing my dream. I've always wanted to be a mom. It's all I've ever wanted. And we got there and the bleeding had stopped. And, they said, well, everything seems to be okay. So I went for an ultrasound the next day and there he was, just the heart beating and moving around. But, it was very strange to me. And that was hard because then the panic attacks started. I mean, I almost wonder if some of the precognition started back then, just because it was such a scary thing that I went nights without sleeping and I wouldn't be alone. So Jeff would go to work, and this was summer. I was a teacher. He would take me to my mom's because I just couldn't be alone. I was so afraid. I just was so afraid of losing him that I didn't know what to do. And, my doctor tried to give me Valium and I wouldn't take anything because obviously, his baby and he's still okay. And I'm just not going to take anything. So, he ended up being born. And let me tell you, he was not a typical baby. Right from the get-go, there was something different about him. And we didn't have anything to compare it to. We just thought babies were easy. He never cried. Never. And I'm not exaggerating. He slept through the night the first night home. We came home and he slept 10 hours through the night. And I called the hospital in the morning and the nurses said, that's not okay. Like, you need to be waking him up. That's not okay. We tried putting cold, he just was, he was fine. He ate a lot during the day. I mean, but he was never fussy. I think he cried once when he was 9 months and we had no idea what to do. I'm like, Jeff, should we call your mom? Like, I don't know what to do. Do you think he's sick? Do you think we had no idea because he was the most content baby. He just looked around and soaked everything up and took everything in. And, he was not an early talker because he had some ear infections. Once he had tubes, he started talking in full sentences. But other than that, we never had to teach him anything. He was just intuitive. He learned, he knew it all. He knew things before they were taught. And just for an example, I had bought this puzzle from Target. It was the puzzle of the United States. And I was trying to sneak it in thinking, I'll save it for a few years down the line because he was a year old. And I'll save it for a couple of years down the line when the kids are a little bit older or for whenever, because it was on clearance. And he saw it and he said, I want to play that. I want to play that. And we had done puzzles with him. He had all the wooden puzzles he had learned, that his ABCs. He could spell his name at a year old. I mean, we didn't teach him, but he saw his Christmas stocking and he said, Austin. I said, did you teach him that? And Jeff's like, no, I didn't. Did you teach him that? I'm like, no, but he just knew how to spell his name. Well, we did the United States puzzle and all, we would just put the states in and he knew the entire continental United States. He knew what was next to what, and he knew all the states.
Capital.
Yeah, before he was 2 years old. And
Crazy.
funny thing was, he learned it upside down because I sat looking at it and he sat on the other side. But he knew it. I couldn't do it from that side, but he could. He could do it from either side. And that's when that's when our pediatrician said, whoa, because she's like, whoa, we need to okay, this is not she said, we need to really advocate for your son. This is the moment we know now we're going to need to advocate for him. You're going to need to be an advocate for him because his mind is very different than other kids his age. Other kids his age are not doing this, and we notice things like that,
And that was so interesting when we had our reading with you, Kat, in 2022. You picked up on all that, and his personality and his intelligence and his quirkiness, and everything about him. And that's really when we started getting into it, is like the evidence that you get, in a reading, and then picking up when you can pick up the personality. It's like just having a conversation with your son, and it was just amazing. We said he was amazing in the physical form, and he continues to be amazing in the spirit form.
He's a good communicator, isn't he? I remember that.
He really is.
You have to forgive me, I don't remember necessarily the first reading we did.
No, it's years ago.
I remember more recently a group one that we did, and he just chipped in, didn't he, about you doing the leaves in the garden, and he knew exactly what you were doing, what you were struggling with.
The first reading, Josh was with him.
Josh came through.
Which was pretty amazing too, that they were friends.
Do you know what's interesting is Austin's got the problem with the ear, Josh has got the problem with it. I've also got a problem with my ear. All had to have those tubes fitted when we were younger. So isn't that interesting? And we're all quite
interesting
people. Yeah, I think somebody told me that forces you to go inwards from a young age because you have to rely on your inner sense so much more because your hearing's affected. And so you're seeking the answers inside. I thought that's a really interesting explanation. And I'm sure that made him even more profoundly sort of secure in himself, perhaps, when he was learning.
Yeah, he was a little adult, it almost seemed like, and then my mother-in-law always said, this isn't normal. This isn't how babies are. Don't think every baby is going to be like this, because he just, when it was time to eat, he would eat. He would eat anything you gave to him. When it was time to go to bed, he'd say, good night. He would go to bed. There was no fighting us. He was just a pleasure. He was just a pleasure to raise. And then we're like, okay, let's have another one right away, because this is what having kids is going to be like. And then came along Kevin, who slept through the night
and
at
then
8.
You learned.
And then we learned.
Yeah, we learned what
and he was
parenting
just equally as awesome, but in a different way. Yes, he really didn't like to sleep as much, but it was nice to have the boys so close in age, because they were very, very close to one another, and they grew up, just best buddies. But I was going to say, the other couple times we thought we were going to lose Austin too. Well, he had a couple falls out of the wagon. One was head first and a big, goose egg. And one time he was running through the bathroom and slipped on my mother's underwear. She had been taking a bath. And then that was the first stitches. So he had stitches on his forehead that, were pretty cool. He was really close with my mom. And that was something that, was hard when we lost him as well. And then we took a trip to Hawaii when he was about in first grade. Bailey was 4 months. Kevin was a kindergartner, and Austin was a first grader. And we just about lost him in the ocean. It was one of those days when there were, what do you call those?
It was just big waves in the
big wave, riptide, yeah. And the kids were ankle deep in water. And I around water, always been very afraid. I've always just been a freak of a mom with my kids around water. And so I was already watching them like a hawk. And I had the baby in the car seat, and the boys were ankle deep in water. And I was watching them, and a wave came in and went back, and Austin was gone. It just took him. It took him 20 feet out. And of course, then the manic mom, nobody saw it besides me. And I went into panic mom mode. My son is gone. I need help. And so then I screamed loud enough that many people were watching. And Jeff, of course, I think dad of anybody was looking, and about 20 feet down. Did you see him or what?
Well, I ran out there because I saw the wave take him out and stood there, and I couldn't find him. And all of a sudden I looked, and about 20 feet to my left, and he was dog paddling and choking and
Yeah, he was
spitting up water.
the little head just above the water.
So I was able to grab him and bring him
It
back.
brought him back in, but it was scary. It scared him. It scared all of us. It was just, and all the kids were in the same water. Luckily, the kids had swimming lessons, so he knew. I mean, I'm sure he panicked because it was scary, but swimming lessons at that point, I don't know, but he knew enough to tread water, and he was kicking and whatever. He couldn't yell because he was probably had water in his mouth, but that was a really scary time with Austin too. Like, I thought, this is going to be it. This is, where your life flashes before your eyes. And, so there were a few times so that we were afraid we were going to lose him, but, he always seemed to come back and be okay, which was a miracle.
I can really relate to that, having nearly drowned myself. Water is unpredictable, and it doesn't matter how good at swimming you were. I used to be a lifeguard and I was pretty confident in water, but a freak day and a freak situation and everything can change.
Yeah, when you had mentioned the prescience, the kind of knowing 6 months ahead of time, I'm sure you probably have, I've already told you guys this, but, we had a very similar experience with Josh. Josh it was diagnosed as POTS, which you'd have to look it up, but basically it's you stand up. Yeah. So he had that, and, it was, I think it started a couple years before he passed, but it was unexplainable. He'd have these, panic attacks out of nowhere. And, like a crappy dad, I was, kind of like, oh, toughen up and get over it, that kind of thing. I didn't really understand what a panic attack was and how serious it was. But everyone in our family knew. We never talked about it, but we all knew that he wouldn't go past a certain point. And I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but what I have come to realize is that there is a knowing that we have. Not all of us. There's some of us, just it's a big surprise. But at least in my case, and it sounds like in your case too, there was some knowing ahead of time. And that's probably a whole episode in and of itself.
Yeah, I certainly had that experience when I lost my last child. And I had the experience that you had, Nan, of the baby, that the scan was fine. And then this knowing that it wasn't going to be fine. And I kept saying to my husband, it's not fine. And then I went to a mediumship demonstration, and another medium started singing a song that my grandfather used to sing to my sister. And I just knew, because it's smoke gets in your eyes, I just knew he was saying, there's tears coming, the baby's not coming. And I knew that was the warning. And it felt like he was trying to comfort me so that I would know it wasn't me, that it wasn't anything that I could control. And so I didn't have like the 6-month warning, but I had a 6-week warning. And then I went to my husband and I said, we're going to lose the baby. He said, don't be so silly. Anyway, they sent me to the hospital because I did start to bleed like you did. And they did a scan and they said, they did say something that was a little bit kind of loose, where they just went, yeah, well, at least you've got one. No. And then I just thought, just like, they're confirming. But I was like, should I be going on holiday? Because I was just about to take a flight. It was in the second trimester. And she said, oh, yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And unfortunately, actually, I was fine in a really strange way, because I was insured health-wise. I got better private health insurance from being abroad at the time that it happened. But yeah, it's really scary.
Yeah.
3 days in hospital following a hemorrhage. It was pretty bad. And I had a weird experience. Ava was sick at the time, so her and my husband couldn't come in with me. So I had to really have a moment of faith of just saying, hands on heart, this was meant to be. I was warned. And so I had that moment where I did sob like you do. You cry, don't you? You're heartbroken. And then you kind of bring it together, and I sort of found peace in the fact that I've been warned. It was never going to be. And now I look back on it, we talk about soul planning. I think I'd have never been in front of you guys. I would never have had the level of empathy. I would never have had the passion level that's required for doing the work that I do. I'd never have been able to fulfill that. And I really do feel that was the preparation for this work. And so in a way, it's really weird. I've come full circle, and now I feel profoundly grateful for the loss, even though that sounds awful, doesn't it? It sounds awful, but it's not. I would do anything to have that baby back tomorrow. But that baby gave me so much experience, even just in the short journey it was here. It gave me everything I needed to know. And that's kind of profound as well. So I can relate to what you're saying, Nan. It's hard. And so at what stage did you find Helping Fathers Heal? At what stage did you get involved with this one here?
Yeah. When did your life really start to go downhill?
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, I'm one of those dads that came kicking and screaming along, and my wife dragged me and said, This is
what we're going to do.
This is what we're going to do.
We're going to attend this meeting tonight. We're going to do this.
So we were able to do, a number of things together. We were able to do a book group that focused on NDEs and some life lessons from heaven. We were able to attend a lot of the HPH events and gallery readings together.
Jensen's.
It was Jeff Jansen.
Jeff Jansen.
Yes, he's from Wisconsin, and his real good friend are real good friends with ours. He went to Marquette here, and they gave me his book. And Jeff signed it and gave me his phone number. Said, when you are ready, you give me a call. And he had invited me to his next session, and I couldn't do it. I cried through every meeting. I mean, all of the HPH meetings, probably the first year, I sobbed through every one of them. Good thing the microphones are muted, because number one, I was sad. And number two, I could feel the heaviness of every person sitting in that meeting. Like, it's very hard for me. It was hard for me at the conference. The conference was hard for me. I know a lot of people really take it all in, and I'm a major introvert. I'm kind of pushed into being very social. When I was a teacher, I was forced to be social, but I'm very much an introvert. So I was really uncomfortable. And as lovely as people were and open as people were, it was difficult for me to be with that many people and to feel the heaviness of the pain that people were feeling.
That's something that people don't realize. And then there's two sides to it, isn't it? Some people feel the high vibrations of all the high light beings in the room, which actually makes you more sensitive, I think. And then other people feel this heaviness of the grief. And I think empathetically, I feel that as well. I think that's what my job is moving through other people's energy. It comes into me, that I get rid of it for them in a way, allowing it to move through. But yeah, it's absolutely true. I think it makes you more empathetic when you've lost a child, and so you feel and carry everybody else's grief with you as well.
Yeah, Kat, a couple other synchronicities with Jeff Jansen. So again, at this point, he had just heard of us through his friend that we knew, and they were college buddies. Well, we went back, and he actually grew up in a town not too far from where I grew up. And we looked back, we actually played basketball against each other in high school. We didn't know each other, but we were a year apart in school, and we actually played basketball against each other. When it came to the 22 conference, I remember it was the first thing we were really looking forward to doing since Austin passed.
We were ready. We were going to do it, and we were so excited.
And we were going to get to meet both of you in person, along with many other people. And then I became very ill with COVID, and then Nan got sick, and we had to cancel. And we had sent everything in. We had Austin's badge made. So Jeff Jansen wore Austin's button at the 22 conference all around for that entire conference. And he journaled everything that happened between he and Austin for us, and then wrote up a real nice summary of how he felt being able to represent Austin at that conference.
Do you know what's really amazing as well? He also sent me a copy of his book.
That's great.
Which is just, and I don't think that's common. I don't think it is common. It's like, that's so lovely. He's such a great guy. I found so warm and healing.
Yes.
So as far as helping fathers heal, then I joined after probably about 15 months after Austin passed.
And again, it was something I had seen or heard about in a meeting. And I said, hey, I think you should check this out. This might be good, because I didn't see Jeff showing a lot of emotion. We were talking about a lot of things. I was crying all the time, and not to say there's one right way to do it, but he was back at work, and we were back in the routine, and unfortunately, life goes on, and I just didn't see a lot. I could see it in his face, but I couldn't, I don't know. I knew he was really hurting. So I happened to see this Helping Fathers Heal, and I thought, maybe he'd feel comfortable with just men, Yeah,
at that point, I was doing all my ugly crying in my truck on the way to work, and on the way home, I was doing it by myself. That's where I would just let it loose, and you try to be strong for the family and our other son, Kevin, and our daughter, Bailey. So I joined the group, and boy, it was tough right away. I couldn't hardly get a word out, and Mike Edwards was just such a calming force. And at this point, Andy was part of the group. Andy's a few months ahead of us on this journey, and you got into Helping Fathers Heal earlier than I did. So Andy he was one of the bigwigs when I joined. And, it just, the first few meetings, I couldn't say a word, but I listened, and the guys were calming, and there's so much evidence, things we don't normally talk about, NDEs and different therapy responses and mediums, and just getting out your feelings and be able to vocalize what you're holding inside. And everyone was just it's the same thing with HPH. It's almost like a family. And the HFH, it's a brotherhood. And we truly love each other. It's, we're a bunch of guys on a 3-inch by 3-inch square talking to each other every week, but you become very close with each other, and everyone understands what you're going through. We may have different journeys and different circumstances, but there's so much that unites us and bonds us that it just became something that I really wanted. I couldn't wait for the next Wednesday.
That's so important as well, Jeff. Did you find relationships change with other friends and colleagues?
100%. Yes.
Yeah, I'll relate to it.
Yeah. And I think that's what I love most about HFH, because you find a lot of your friends you had prior to, losing a child, they're very uncomfortable and don't want to talk about your child anymore. And it's like, he passed, and talking about a relationship with a child that has passed is unsettling for some, but not in this group too. So, we had so many resources. We had guest speakers, like yourself, Kat, and other speakers come in. That was so helpful. And eventually I was able to become an affiliate leader with Andy. As the group grew and Mike needed some help, I was happy to step up and, serve other guys that are coming through. And I think that's an important part of my healing, is being able to help others and serve others.
Yeah. No, and he's amazing at it. You can tell by his conversation, very soothing, very calm. When there's a new dad, all of us empathize. And when you're in the hot seat, as it is, if you're the affiliate leader for the day, it's important for us to connect with those dads, let them know it's okay. And, Jeff is probably the best of us at doing that.
You do have a very soothing voice, Jeff. You do. You've got the perfect hypnotherapist, grief counselor's voice. You have got a lovely tone to your voice. Do you sing as well? Have you got a singing as well?
Oh,
that's a no.
Austin was the only singer in our family.
We said Cottrells do not sing, but Austin did, and he just had a love for music. He really got into a cappella, and he liked to perform. He actually sang in choir. Yeah, he sang in choir in college. Yep.
Yeah. He was a double bass. He was a skinny little kid, and he was this double bass. Like, he had such a deep voice. It's really fun for him. He met his group of kids through choir. Like, he kind of had a hard time exactly finding. He tried a lot of things growing up, a lot of sports. He loved sports. He didn't always have the body type to be able to participate at a high level, because he grew late, and he was a little, low in weight and everything, but loved it. And again, with the numbers, he was so into sports and football. He knew every football player. Like, when anybody did their fantasy draft, they always consulted with Austin, because he knew every player, where they played in college, how many receptions they had, blah, blah, blah. It was just, when he was 4 too, he could tell you the Packers record every year. People would always just go up and ask him, because he knew it all. He knew everything about the Packers and everything about every other team, even beyond the Packers. Yeah, sports were a big, and they remain to be something he really, really bonded with. In fact, he and my mom bonded through sports. My mom, they called Grandma Barb.
I was just going to say, do you get sports references as part of your sign, or numbers and music?
If we do, they probably bounce off my forehead, because as Irene has said in her interview, because I feel like I turn myself off. I still really struggle. We're over 5 years in, and on the continuum of healing, I think I'm, right down here, and I don't know why. I'm really, really still struggling. And I'm grateful for helping parents heal and reading about NDs and mediums, because if I wouldn't have had any of that, again, I don't think I would be here, honestly. I don't think I would have had the strength to keep going on, And I'll use another one, something Irene said, she said, I didn't want to live, but I didn't want to die. And I still feel that way a lot, and it's hard to say that, but it's just truthful. I feel like that mother duck that's always looking for that duck, that baby that disappeared. I don't know.
It's nature. You're always going to look for the one that's missing.
Yeah.
Always. Always.
Well, like you said, Austin is a strong communicator, and he has given us some incredible signs.
Yeah. We should tell them a few of the signs that he's given us, because it's, like there's been a few where we would say, okay, if you were not here, nobody would believe this. And they would think we are absolutely nuts. Like, some have been that amazing. So.
Yeah. A couple that come to mind for me, Nan referenced Austin's, he had incredible memory. He was just an exceptional student. He'd have to read things once and it was just there. He just got it. And so as a family, we used to watch a show called Criminal Minds. I mean, it's a little
dark.
It's a little dark, but it's something we did. And they had, a bunch of different seasons and different episodes. And whenever it would be on the TV, Austin could walk in the room not knowing. He'd say, oh, that's season 7, episode 13. And we'd call BS. And you'd look it up, and it was. So when we had Austin's service, his celebration of life, my daughter, my son, Nan, and I, we all spoke at the service. And Nan concluded it. And when you watch Criminal Minds, they kind of start the show and end the show with a quote and
profound
words. And a quote in this episode was about the sacredness of tears. And that's one of my favorite quotes. So Nan read this quote, and she goes, by the way, season 5, episode 11. So that was the episode that it came from. So this is weeks after, again, we said earlier.
It was weeks. I think it was days after.
Yeah. Well, we hadn't watched the TV forever.
All 4 of us were just laying there.
Yep. So we turned on the TV, to say, what should we watch? And we didn't hit anything. Netflix just started playing, and season 5, episode 11 just came on and started playing. And it was just the episode that we used to use that quote. Yeah.
And I was like, well, Kevin, did you set this up? And he's like, no. I thought maybe one of the kids had put it on and, whatever. But that was the first thing. And that was within a week. And we were like, whoa, that was pretty amazing.
And then another time we're watching TV, also the TV just shuts off all by itself.
We're watching Harry Potter.
That's right.
Favorite.
It was Harry Potter.
Streaming it. So it wasn't even live TV. We were streaming. And it was, I think, probably the first episode. I don't remember which one.
So the TV shuts off, and then these words just appear on the screen. And it was about forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, or I'm going to grant forgiveness, even though if someone doesn't, it was a little dark, but it said it was about forgiveness and for people not apologizing, but forgiving them so you can find inner peace. And it was
just showed up on the TV. And we did take a picture of it. It was there about a minute, and then it went back to the
show.
But we were both like, okay, if you weren't here, you would have never believed this happened. This is, so then, we tried to figure out, what was he trying to tell us? What was he trying to tell us? And, there's still a lot of anger with his death. We still blame people. I mean, ourselves, there's a lot of blame with ourselves and people that chose not to help him. And, so we figured maybe it was his way of telling us, let it go, just let it go. You're going to have to forgive and, to get peace. And
when we took that class with Jeff Jansen that we referenced earlier, the 10 life lessons from heaven, one of the chapters is forgiveness. And I think that's a very important part to be able to do that, to get towards unconditional love, which we're all shooting for. And then in helping fathers heal, we talk about a lot of things. And I just remember Mike Edwards saying, you ask for a specific sign, or one of the dads did in a group. And I know Mike was talking about it. And he said, just ask for something specific. So on a trip up to our cabin, I was going up for deer hunting. And I said, okay, Austin, I'm going to ask for 3 signs. I said, I want you to take the light bulb out while we're playing cards. That was one of his favorite things to do, was play cards up there. I want to find a big feather. This is winter now, so there's not a lot of birds around left here in Wisconsin. I want to find a big feather when I go out hunting, and I want to see a bald eagle. Again, now it's winter, the lakes are frozen. We're not going to have any bald eagles. So the first night we're playing cards, this light on the table just starts flashing. And
Wow.
I told my son Kevin and my nephew Cal, I said, I asked Austin to do that. And I would point at the light and it would flicker. I'd put my hand down, it would stop. I would point my hand at it, it would flicker. So I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. So then the next day I go hunting, I come back in, and right in front of the cabin is a big turkey feather laying right in front in the fresh snow, no tracks around, but a big turkey feather laying right there. So I'm like, all right, I got two. I said, number 3 is going to happen tomorrow. Well, the next day, and I never got my eagle. So I got home and I told Nan about it. I said, well, I got the first 2. I said, that's pretty good, but I didn't get the eagle. So I started unpacking, and I had used, Austin had a little toiletry pouch that he used for travel. So I used that. I took that over and started using it. And I'm unpacking, and I open up one of the compartments in there. Well, inside was his passport, a paper picture of his passport that he had used to go to Ukraine to visit our host son that we had. And I open it up, and there's a big eagle right on there. And I'm like, there we go. So I got all 3.
Yeah.
So
And that just,
that was pretty neat.
well, it doesn't always have to be a live eagle. It's going to come as a print on a T-shirt or an illustration or a photograph. It's just amazing, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah. My favorite sign, though, if you want to tell, just recent.
And I don't get many signs, and I probably do, but the ones I've gotten have been pretty amazing. I'm trying to think if I... Oh, there was one, well...
The pink t-shirt.
Yeah, I know. But Austin's always been our spoiler, too. He's the one that can't keep a secret. He never could keep a secret. He was always the one that would tell somebody what they're getting for their birthday or whatever, if he knew. We usually didn't tell him because, again, he couldn't keep a secret. But one time at a medium reading...
with Kat.
Oh, this was you kept bringing up these diamond earrings, and we couldn't place them, and finally we could place them because they were for our daughter who was sitting between us for her graduation. And so finally we're like, okay, Bailey, you're getting diamond earrings for graduation. Austin obviously is at his tricks again, you know. Yes. Because you were like, I'm sure about this, and I see them, and I know.
I was trying to redirect Kat. I'm like, no, we just don't know.
No diamonds.
Yeah, and Kat goes, I know this is right. He wants to talk about these earrings, and we finally had to fess.
Like, okay, whatever. We just told her, but that was kind of special for.
What I love about that is that's his signature is to be a spoiler.
It is his signature.
Not so bad.
And then we'd found out through a few other mediums that we were going to have a grandbaby on the way fairly soon. And, you know, sure enough, Evan and Jamie stopped over and said that July 10th, our wedding anniversary, our 33rd?
32nd.
32nd. Well, it seems a little bit longer than it really is.
Yes.
They were going to have a baby. And they found out the gender of the baby on Christmas Day. They had done a blood test and they got the results. And then later on, a few weeks later, we had this little reveal or whatever. Well, we all felt a really strong boy. Like, we just thought, I think this, you know, we think it's going to be a boy. About 2 nights before the reveal, I had a dream about Austin. Now, it wasn't a dream visit because it wasn't something I felt like in my soul. It wasn't something that I think I had one before that, like, I just can't ever shake the feeling of it. It's just very different. But he was in my dream and it was very vivid. And he had his black glasses on and he had this bright pink dress shirt on. And he was speaking to a group and then he waved to me and you know, it was a really great dream. And I was so grateful to have it. And I woke up in the morning and I said to Jeff, oh, I had a dream about Austin. And it was amazing. And he had this bright pink shirt on. He just looked so good. He looked so happy and healthy. And I said, it's going to make my whole day better. And we kind of went on with the day and got to the reveal. And they cut the cake and pulled up the piece and that bright pink cake. And I thought, that sneaky snake. He told us. He told me 2 days before it was going to be a girl because the color of the shirt was so distinct. It just was, there was no mistaking it. And he was putting it right in my face. Like, he needed me to see this pink shirt. He didn't own, I think he had a pink t-shirt, but not a dress shirt. And the fact that I had told Jeff about it, but we really didn't. As soon as I saw the pink cake, my mind went pink shirt, Austin. Austin told us.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So
that is an incredible sign.
Yeah. So we're going to
is really
a
good.
granddaughter in July, which is pretty special.
And it goes with the theme that he can't keep the secret.
Yep.
No, I felt, what I thought right away is he knows her already. Like he knows her soul already. And I thought
They're hanging out.
it's so beautiful. It really comforted me to know that he knows who's coming into our family and how loved she is already,
That's so true, isn't it? The love just keeps going. Wow, what an amazing story. Very, very powerful.
Thank you so much, you guys.
So much.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Thanks
We
for
really
having
appreciate it.
us.